Hello and welcome to your short training video on improving your resilience. My name is Amy Mason-Brown and I'm your trainer for this video today. I work for Bespoke Consultancy and Education, a training provider in the Southwest. This training is going to be looking at how to improve your resilience. We're going to be looking at what do we mean by resilience, why resilience is important, how to build resilience, and suggestions for improving and supporting your well-being and resilience. So first of all, let's look at what we mean by resilience. It's a term that's often used and one that we hear really often in response to the COVID pandemic. But in reality, resilience is the successful adaptation to life's tasks in the face of social disadvantage or highly adverse conditions. What that really means is it's the ability to cope under pressure and recover from difficulties. It's how we bounce back. It's how we work with those problems and how we're able to problem solve and cope in our everyday lives. So resilience allows you to draw from the past experiences. It's both physical and emotional experiences, and it allows you to manage and overcome difficult times. Resilience is really important because learning to be resilient can also help make you stronger, and it can help you with each challenge you encounter. It helps you to develop new skills and new ways of dealing with life and challenge. So let's have a look at why resilience is important. Improving your resilience can help make people more motivated. It helps to make people more capable of dealing with change, and it helps to make people less susceptible to burnout. In these recent times, burnout is something that we've seen across the board. Burnout is where people become exhausted from their everyday lives, where you've constantly been going through a crisis and a pandemic, and actually sometimes we are at the end of our exhaustion levels and we don't quite know how to bounce back from that because it can take time and it can take energy. So by looking at your resilience, what you're doing is you're addressing some of those things that can cause you to burn out, and you're allowing for an interjection in place that will allow you to grow and develop your own strategies for supporting you from avoiding burnout. So resilience is really important. It can make you handle challenges better. It can help improve communication. It can help reduce burnout. It can help you to set and achieve realistic goals and targets. So those goals in your life that you're wanting to be working on, having a really strong resilience can really help you with those and help those to be achievable. It can help build better and stronger relationships, both in your work environment and in your home and social environment, because when you're feeling stronger and able to deal with adversity, you're able to work better with people and you're able to work better in terms of understanding your emotional responses. So having that social connection is really important. And it helps you to have the ability to prioritise. Often when we're feeling burnt out and when we're feeling stressed, what we need to be doing is working out what is a priority, what is a must do now, and what is something that can wait, or something that actually is a really nice to do but isn't able to be done now. So having a really strong resilience helps you to work with your priorities and what's really vital for you in the moment. And finally, resilience is really important because it helps provide the opportunity for you to give and receive support. So it allows you to be able to support other people, but it also allows you to be open and susceptible to receiving support for yourselves, which ultimately helps you to grow and develop your own strategies and your own sense of well-being. All of these things are really vital for surviving in the current state of affairs, but also for everyday existence. So the ability to bounce back, the ability to grow, the ability to problem solve not only helps you in the middle of a pandemic, but it also helps you with your everyday life too. So something that we're going to be looking at is how we can embrace change. So if we're thinking about resilience in terms of being able to bounce back from issues or concerns and being able to problem solve, that really focuses on our ability to talk about change and accept change and work with those changes that come at us. There have been lots and lots of changes recently. We've seen lots and lots of impact from COVID-19, from a pandemic, from lockdown, from isolation. And actually, those things alone are enough to really impact our sense of well-being and resilience. So what we're going to be looking at is, how do we embrace change? How do we develop new thinking and actually impact those new results? So embracing change is a fundamental element of building resilience. It's a really key part because we have to accept that change is inevitable and it is going to happen in our everyday lives, because by doing that we're then able to embed strategies that help support us with that change and make it most effective. So if you can accept that nothing stays the same, that we're in a constant state of flux, then we're starting with the right mindset. We're starting with that ability to appreciate that growth mindset. It helps you to respond to change because you're already aware that change is going to happen and that we're able to cope with it. And here's the key bit: knowing that you have the capacity to cope with change. You've coped with everything that's come before you. That really empowers you. That really gives you the opportunity to meet those challenges with determination and with confidence. And by meeting those challenges with determination and confidence, you're able to take them in your stride and you're able to respond to them from a more positive mind frame. And then it doesn't seem so big, or it doesn't seem so insurmountable. So this idea of really embracing change and really working with those things that are going to come at us, accepting that they will, and accepting that you're able to cope with those and you will find the strategies to move forward, is that key starting point, that first step on the journey to building resilience. So how else are we going to build resilience? What else do we do? It can't be that easy, right? It can't be as easy as just accepting that change is inevitable, and it's not that easy. But there are some key areas in ways that you can build your resilience. So we're going to look at those 5 key areas now. Those areas are developing emotional intelligence, developing a sense of energy, both internal and external, developing effective relationships, developing perspective, and also identifying priorities. So those 5 key areas will help you to build your sense of resilience and your sense of being able to cope better in times of change and adversity. Let's look at the first one now. Emotional intelligence is being able to identify and value your own emotions and the emotions of others. So it's that understanding of the importance of emotions and the triggers for those emotions and working with them. By developing an emotional connection with others, what you're doing is helping yourself to understand your own values and to feel valued in return. So those things that make you feel happy, those things that make you feel contented, are those fundamental values that need to be present in your life. By recognizing them and by building more of them, you're able to develop that emotional connection, and you're able to recognize that emotional connection in other people. Another aspect of emotional intelligence is developing empathy for others. So being able to support others to have their own thoughts and feelings and being able to validate them. So appreciating that people's thoughts and feelings are their own, but also having empathy for them. So being able to share how they might be feeling is a really powerful thing to happen that helps to build resilience. That validation, that allowing people to feel, is a really vital part, because those feelings are completely real, they're completely valid to those individuals and to yourselves. So if we're feeling guilty about being upset or being anxious or being panicked or being angry or frustrated, then actually we're devaluing those emotions that are really, really important at this stage, because we are frustrated and we are anxious and we are feeling that times are difficult. But at the same time, it's how can we elevate that into a sense of being valued and appreciated. Another way to develop emotional intelligence is to be reflective on emotional responses. So consider what your emotional response is and what triggered it and what happened there. And that reflective cycle about what did I feel, or what was the reasoning behind that, and how did that impact my behaviour moving forward or my emotions moving forward, allows you to understand the emotional cycle that you might be going through. And that reflective exercise allows that step back and that really wide picture of this is how I'm responding to this situation, and is that how I want to be responding, and how could I maybe shift things to make them a little bit more helpful to myself, is a really vital element of how to work with your own understanding of your responses. And whilst we understand our emotional responses, we're also able to look at situations differently too, and we're able to look at them more objectively. So by taking that step back and really reflecting on our response, our emotional differences, our emotional thoughts and feelings around a situation, we're able to consider alternative ways that perhaps would be more helpful. And that emotional intelligence really does underpin all of the other aspects that we're going to look at in this training session, because by understanding your response and you're reflecting on those, you're able to work with them in a much better way. So let's move on to looking at how we develop and build our energy to help support our resilience and our growth. Energy comes from a really wide range of areas. It comes from food, it comes from sleep, it comes from motivation. But in reality, what we're talking about here is how are you taking care of yourself? It's really common to hear lots of people on the front line putting themselves last and putting their own care needs at the very bottom of that priority list. And in reality, by doing that, what you're doing is identifying that your needs don't matter, or that your energy levels are less vital than other people's. And whilst we're in a pandemic, that kind of thinking is really normal. That's really something that we see very, very often. But ultimately, if you're coming to a point of having less and less resilience, then perhaps putting some energy into yourself is where we need to start. So that really looking after yourself, really taking care of yourself. And that doesn't have to be anything massive or time consuming, but getting enough sleep, taking a lunch break, identifying when you're stressed and anxious and worried, and allowing yourself the opportunity to explore that and perhaps put some strategies in place. Or doing things that really nurture yourself. So if that's walking the dog, or taking a bath, or reading a book, or doing a dance class, whatever that looks like for you is something that can really help develop your sense of resilience. Taking that time to really support and feed your body the right foods we already know is really, really important. Getting enough exercise we already know is really, really important. It's also those small things, those things that allow you to feel re-energized. Is it that cup of tea in the morning first thing? Have you been skipping that? Is it cooking a meal that you enjoy doing? Is that something that you find nurturing? It's finding the thing that feeds your body and your mind that energy level. For a lot of people, that comes with the idea of sleep and making sure that you're sleeping properly and having good sleep hygiene. For other people, that comes with having a really healthy diet and a really good exercise routine. For other people, it's reminding themselves to have their actual lunch and to actually eat something throughout the day. There's no right or wrong here, but it is a case of making sure you're identifying what your pattern is and how you work with your pattern and how you can build that energy for yourself. So let's have a look at relationships and building that sense of connectivity. To help develop your resilience, we need to make sure we're developing strong personal connections. We need to have meaningful relationships, and those relationships need to develop a strong support network and allow us to build up connections and to feel valued. Now, in lockdown, in isolation, that's much easier said than done. However, those connections and those relationships can come in a really wide variety of formats. It's about how you communicate with people. It's ensuring that you do not fully isolate yourself from a human company. Now, whether that is by having a WhatsApp group, or whether it's from developing social media connections, whether it's from having video calls, whether it is from having those people in your bubble and making time for that social connection, whether it is about developing your support network within your work role. Are you having opportunity to debrief? Are you having opportunity for effective supervisions? It's looking at those really supportive and developing relationships and how they work with you to build that level of connection. And this will aid you in those really difficult situations, because not only will you have a support network to draw upon, but you'll also then have those alternative methods of communication with people, and you won't feel so isolated or alone. We've all learned new ways of working with people over the last year and a half. We've all had to learn how to work in isolation, or work remotely, or work with a reduced workforce. But it's about identifying what works for you in terms of building strong connections. And it might just be reaching out to people once a week and saying hello. It might be sharing those memes on social media. But it's about making those connections with people And if you can develop effective relationships and connections with people, you're then developing your support network, which again helps you with resilience in terms of dealing with adversity. So let's take a look at how we develop our sense of perspective. And this is really how we look at things. Quite often, if we become in a negative thinking cycle, what we're doing is we're reinforcing a negative thinking pattern. And that is how we see the world. That's the pair of glasses that we put on, is we see things from a negative frame of reference, especially if we're feeling particularly run down or feeling particularly vulnerable. So when we're thinking about building our resilience, we're thinking about how much we're dwelling on those negative perspectives. Are we seeing the world from a very catastrophized frame of reference? Or are we able to gain a bit of a handle on our thoughts, particularly those negative ones, so we can take some positive action? Not everything can be flipped into a positive, and actually not everything should be, because it's about valuing those experiences and those feelings that we have. But if we are in a negative frame of mind and our thoughts are all framed from a very negative perspective, so things like I can't do that, I shouldn't do that, I ought to be doing this, then those shoulds, woulds, oughts and coulds really affect our ability to feel like we're coping. So it's about reframing some of those things, and actually it would be really good if I can actually do this, but it's okay if I don't. So reframing that language and that terminology that you use, about looking at your perspective. Are you expecting the worst from everything, and therefore we're only seeing the negative and not able to take a moment to see the positives? It really does impact how you're thinking and feeling, and it really does affect how you see the world and how you move forward. So not only do our negative thoughts keep us worried and anxious, but we're also then fixating on a negative outcome and we fear the worst. So that cycle of negative thinking can really impact our next action and how we're going to move forward, because we are fearing the worst as opposed to finding an opportunity for something positive that could potentially come out. We're only seeing those dark days, we're not seeing those glimmers of light, which again is really common in the middle of a pandemic and really, really normal. But it's about recognising when you're in that frame of mind and seeing if there are interventions that you can put in place to just flip some of those thinking. So let's have a little look at how we might reframe something. Close your eyes for a second and just think about one very small thing that would allow you a sense of contentment right now. Now, if you're thinking about booking a holiday and thinking immediately after, I'd love to go on a holiday, but I can't because we don't know when that's going to happen, that thing is not small enough. That is something that would be really lovely to do and would be really positive to do and is a good strategy to have. However, it's not something that's achievable in this moment necessarily. So dial it back a little bit. Think about one small thing that actually would allow you a moment of contentment. It might be making that cup of tea. It might be sending that message to somebody you've not heard from in a while that you'd like to reach out to. It might be planning a meal that when you get home so that you know you've got something waiting for you. It might be taking the dog out for a walk. Those small things that allow you those moments of contentment allow you to start focusing on things that build your resilience. So booking the holiday would be fabulous, and if you can and you're able to, then by all means book the holiday. But actually those big things add to that negativity if they're unachievable. So dial it back a little bit. See if we can reframe ever so slightly to make something achievable and make those small things and those small moments of contentment build up into recognizing that actually there are some really good things happening in my day. Consider the images that came to you. Consider what brings you comfort. Is it reading that book in an evening? Is it picking up the phone and having a conversation with a friend? Is it having a moment of peace and quiet? Whatever that is, see if we can build some more of that into your day, because those moments of comfort are what we need to be recognizing. So that brings us to looking at priorities and how we prioritize the tasks in our lives. Now, you're all incredibly busy people and you all work an incredibly stressful and quite taxing role. And it's about understanding that some of the priorities in our life we have to do, and those things do take priority, and they are really important. But quite often when our resilience is low, we're constantly thinking about the things we should be doing and we have to be doing and we're not doing. And then it creates that negative cycle, as we've already spoken about. So identify what your priorities are. What are the things that have to be accomplished? And can they be broken down into steps that feel slightly more manageable? Can you create goals for yourself? Are there reasonable things that you would like to achieve and that you can celebrate when you accomplish them? Only do things that you can achieve in the short term, because if you're setting goals for long term, what you're doing is you're delaying that celebrating that success, which again reinforces that negative mind frame. So consider setting short, achievable goals about what you can actually accomplish and what you would like to accomplish that would make you feel more in control. Doing those things and recognizing when you've achieved them is really important. For some people that might be creating a to-do list. For others it might be creating an ideas board of what they'd like to do. For others it might just be getting through the day, and those are all absolutely fine. But identify what you'd like to accomplish and recognize when you've accomplished it, because it's that recognition that again shifts that mindset into something that is much more achievable, manageable, and you're training your mind to recognize when you're problem solving, which is all about what resilience is. So when you recognise that you've achieved something and you've recognised that you have actually met those goals, it's really important to give yourself credit for that. Even if that goal was really small, that's okay. You have overcome something that you set yourself to do, and you're allowed to celebrate for that moment your actual achievement of that goal. And by doing that, you're allowing yourself to recognise that you're able to problem solve. A really effective strategy, but it takes training, and it takes that vigilance of setting your goal, recognizing when you've achieved it. But make sure that those goals are achievable. Don't set those goals that are unachievable and give yourself another reason to feel negative around it. It's about that mindset. So what we're looking at here is about taking action. So when we're thinking about resilience isn't something that necessarily comes naturally all on its own. It takes work. It takes us building it. It takes vigilance. It takes motivation to try and build that sense of resilience and be able to bounce back from certain things. So what we're going to think about finally is how we take action. So thinking about those goals that you might have set or created for yourself, think about what action you would like to take to move forward to build your resilience. You don't have to do it all at once, but pick one of these things we've talked about in this training video. Is there one thing that perhaps might make a small difference to you? Do that one small thing, and then do more of that one small thing, and eventually you'll see that difference come into play. So if it's reaching out to people and building that connectivity, see if you can put that into play. If it's about building your own sense of energy and addressing that, the sleep patterns that you have or the food patterns that you have, see if you can have a look at that and work on that area and develop it. Take decisive action. Because dealing with problems and issues head on lets you know that you're in charge and in control of even the most difficult situations, regardless of the outcome. And by taking that action, you're capable of doing something to mitigate the problem, and you're training your unconscious mind to know that you can problem solve and overcome adversity. You're already doing the work. And actually, those small things really do make a difference. You don't have to climb the mountain. You can just take the first step. And you'll notice that difference after you've taken 10 of those first steps, or 3 of those first steps. So I'm going to end this training video with a few key things for you. Some suggestions for developing that sense of well-being and building resilience might be simply downloading some podcasts you've been meaning to listen to. Listen to them in the car, listen to them when you're walking the dog, listen to them before bed. Allow yourself that permission to actually listen to something that you enjoy. Watch those box sets on Netflix. If that moment of peace and solitude, or that moment of watching something you've wanted to watch, is something that would bring you that sense of energy and reset, then do it. Give yourself permission. Allow yourself to actually try some new things. So try some meditation if it's something you've always been intrigued by, or if calming your anxious mind is something that you find difficult, try that meditation. Try a new hobby. Build a sense of what you'd like to do and something that brings you joy and comfort. Take up reading, knitting, cooking, gardening, whatever it is that actually gives you that moment out. Allow yourself the opportunity to develop new skills, but also develop how to problem solve with that new skill. But most importantly, give yourself permission. Give yourself permission to stop, to feel, and to practice self-care, because only that way will you be building your resilience and your ability to overcome any of those challenges in everyday life. Thank you for watching this short training video. I hope that there were some useful tips that you're able to take away. And as I say, one small thing. If we can do one small thing, then you'll be building that sense of resilience. Have a very lovely rest of your day, and please take care out there.